Hey there fellow YouTubers, Frank Bush here again. So in a couple of my past videos I've done some modular ropecraft systems where I've designed and developed out some systems using cordage that allow you to set up camps without having to tie any knots and that kind of stuff, yeah? And in this video today I want to show how you can start to use, if you have more than one of those different modular ropecraft systems, how you can use them in combination with each other to do more advanced things. So if you're interested in that kind of content, stay tuned. So I'll just pull out a couple of them now to give you an idea of exactly what I'm working with if you haven't seen those past videos. And you might want to go back and watch those if you're interested in kind of building out this technology yourself. But I've got a simple version which I've done off, which is made out of tarred bank line. And they're just simple little modular components that kind of interconnect to each other and work together as a set. So I'll come in close and I'll show the details of these as I go, but I'm going to have my bank line simple do-it-yourself modular ropecraft system, and then I also have my Kevlar version, and these ones were a little more time consuming and made out of far higher quality cordage and that kind of stuff. But like I say, I've got full tutorials on my channel for all of this kind of stuff, so if you don't know exactly how I built these out or what the thinking was behind them, go back and watch those previous videos and it'll all become clear to you why I'm using these kits the way I do. But in this video primarily I'm going to show you guys how you can set up like the equivalent of a hammock between two trees. It's not quite a hammock, but it's more like a rope bed, if you will. But I want to show how I can use these in combination with each other to do that rapidly and simply, and then be able to retrieve that after I leave the field, yeah? So like I say, I'll shift camera angles, I'll come in close and show some of the details of these, and then we'll go off to doing the assembly, yeah? So like I say, I kind of come in close and give you the details for the people that haven't seen this stuff. For the people that have watched these previous videos, this will all be old hat, but there's a loop that sits on the one end of one of these units, and then there's 4 knots along the line that just create little kind of gaps in between each one of them, yeah? And then there's a little straight stretch as a foot long, and then it's the same thing on the other side where I've got the loop on the end, and then I've got just 4 knots that exist along, and then I've got multiples of those, and I daisy chain them together and that kind of thing to make it a full ridge line or whatever I want to use these things for. They're really flexible in that regard. And then I'll shift camera angles and show you, because these Kevlar ones are kind of in a bundle, so I'll pull one out and show you what they look like. They're a little variant from the simple ones, yeah? So now with these Kevlar ones, normally I keep them bundled up in sets of 4, where I'll just pull one of them out, and they're all kind of set in to be rapid release, so I'll just pull one out and free it up from the main bundle just to show you guys one of these in isolation. And you can see it's just that easy to free them off from each other. But the thinking with these ones is a little bit different, where I've got 2, sorry, my bad, let me grab that. So this is the end here. So I've got 2 larger loops here that sit, and then there's a knot that sits along them, and then I've got what I call drop lines, and these are Prusik knots that have little kind of line attachments on them. I've just pushed them up to the end here, and then along this line I've got locked brommels all the way along, where it creates loops in the line without having any knots in them. The lock brommel allows me to have kind of a smooth surface here, where it's a little different than the simple bankline versions where I just use knots. These ones have no knots all the way along the line, so it gives me better flexibility when it comes to sliding. I'll go back here. When it comes to sliding these Prusiks, when I want to slide them down the line and adjust them into position, it allows me to do that with ease because there's no knots kind of getting in the way. But you'll see as we go through time, I don't plan on using these little drop lines much in this example. It's primarily just about the main length and body of these modular ropecraft systems. But at the end here, there's a knot that sits there. And like I say, it'll all become clear if you haven't seen these at all before. It'll all become clear of exactly how I use these and that kind of thing. But I just wanted to kind of touch base on that in the beginning of the video, so you weren't totally like, what the hell is this guy doing, right? So one way or the other, I'll start to shift camera angles now, and we'll start to get on with the assembly of the bed, yeah? Okay, so first comment to make, I guess, is I've got 2 trees now that are about give or take about 10 foot apart from each other, and these trees are wider than my shoulder width. You know, when it comes to doing this kind of setup, you definitely want to have kind of larger diameter trees to make it that the bed is just wider as the end result. The narrower your trees, the more difficult it is to make a good platform to kind of sleep on. And like I say, I'll just shift cameras now. There's the one tree, and then I'll just be hooking onto this other tree. This one's a little smaller. This one's about the width of my chest, and this one's about maybe 1.5 times that width. So, you know, it's a little bit bigger, but you get what you get when you get out into the woods, right? So I'll shift camera angles back now, and we'll start doing the actual setup and assembly of the bed. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is just get around this tree. So there's just luckily enough a little nub here I can kind of hook onto to make things easier to begin with. So I'll just kind of leave this sitting on this side. I'll give a walk around the tree here. And like I say, these bundles are all quick release bundles the way I've designed them. And like I say, I talk about it all in the previous video, where I go through it all in granular level detail. But I'm going to bring it out now, and I'm far enough where I now have this side. So as a temporary holding, what I'm going to do, and I'll come in and do a close-up of this, I'm just going to take the knot that's on this side and bring it around, and then just hook it into a little locked brommel on itself. And that way I'm locked onto this tree, and I can run out my line. And I know that my sets aren't going to be long enough to go fully around with just 4 of them. So I'm going to daisy chain on my other set here, and I'll come in close and show that as well, just so I have a full length of the double set, if you will. So like I say, I'll shift camera angles and we'll go through what I just did here in detail and how I daisy chain these along, yeah? So first order business, I'll show you just how I get these to kind of hook onto the tree. I'll just slide these 2 prusik drop lines out of the way, just so it's not kind of busying the example. But all it really was, and I'll pop this back out now. All it was on one of the Modular Ropecraft systems, I took the knot that's up near the double loops, and I just bring that, and then one of the locked brommels that exists on this side, as I've come around the tree, I just take that knot, I bring it around, and then back over top, and then I just feed it through one of the little loops, the lock brommels. I just feed it through there, and then allow it to apply tension. And by doing so, this knot locks now, and these loops kind of pinch and close on it, and I'm strapped onto that tree. I'm not going anywhere, and I didn't have to tie any knots to get there. But I'm just doing this as a temporary holder so I can go wrap around the other tree, yeah? So now I'll show you how I kind of daisy chain these units together, yeah? So I don't have enough length just with the single first set that I put around that tree. Didn't have enough length to reach around to the second tree and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to take the knot that's on the end of this line now, and when I want to extend them, I pulled out my second stack, which is here now. I've just pulled out one of the loops. All I'm going to do now is take this, and I form a little loop here as such, so this kind of loop can slide on the line as seen, yeah? And then I just take the knot on the first one that was going around the tree there, I feed that through and just allow it to apply tension. And now that little lark's head slips up and just locks behind that knot. It has nowhere to go, and these are connected. And if I want to take them apart, it's easy enough to just pull on this little loop on the back, kind of break its back, if you will, and it allows me to slide them back out. So it's really easy to kind of daisy chain these units along and connect together as many as you wanted, and you know, detach them later on in time if you want, without having to get into any complicated knots or any of that business. So I just wanted to kind of show those 2 key elements, you know, when it comes to using this Modular Ropecraft system. Like I say, if you haven't seen the previous videos, if you have, this is all familiar to you. So I'm just going to stop now, and we're going to go and hook onto that second tree and start to kind of carry on with the build, yeah? So like I say, really elementary. I'm just going to come around this tree now. And I want it to be at a decent height where I know it's going to be, you know, easy enough for me to get in and out of this bed as we move through time, yeah? So one way or the other, I'm just going to start walking now back towards that other tree so we can start to set up the main frame part of the bed, yeah? Okay, so I just set this up temporarily just so I can kind of reposition myself, get better angles for the camera and that kind of thing, yeah? And but this is the line now that's just coming from the tree we just wrapped around. And now I'm just going to kind of hold this in my hand for a second. Now the line that we first attached to this main tree, that quick release that we attached to just kind of hold it, I'm going to free that off now, just so I've got my unit back again, yeah? And my thinking now is going to be, I'm going to take the other line here that went around that tree and just kind of give it a bit of tension to it. Now it doesn't have to be super tight or anything, but just enough where you know you're kind of braced on. Now I'm going to take the line that I first came around the tree and hooked on. I'm going to take that and feed it through one of these loops that exist in the line here, as such, and just start to apply tension now. And as I apply tension, everything will just kind of firm up. I'll stop now and just kind of, I'm not even going to go super tight to begin with. And all I'm going to do is take one of these knots, take one of these little lock Brommel loops, feed it into there, and it's locked and it's holding. Now at this point in time, I want to make sure that the height of the bed frame is going to be where I want it at. You know, when it comes to setting this kind of stuff up, when you put your body weight on it, it's always going to sag a bit. Kevlar is pretty good at that compared to, say, like paracord or bank line and that kind of stuff. But either way, there's still a little bit of give. So generally speaking, I'm going to say I want it from about my stomach up to my chest, somewhere in around this range kind of thing, you know, to make it easy for you to get in and out of later on when you actually have the full bed set up, yeah? So this seems okay. I'll stop with the camera. I'm just going to go and adjust both sides, and in essence I want to have them be even in height, and I want to have it where I know that they're lined up properly around the tree, nice and cleanly and that kind of stuff. So there's not much to show on camera there other than me just adjusting a piece of string on the tree. So I'll cut that part out and I'll cut back when we're ready to kind of lock this and tighten it down, yeah? So hopefully you guys can see within reason it's relatively even across now. Now if I wanted to, this is going to be my head end because it's the larger diameter tree. So generally speaking, you know, where you put your head and chest is going to be closer towards the larger of the two trees that you have, just to give you more comfort in the upper body area. You know, that tends to take up the most mass volume, if you will. So I could turn around, and on this tree I could turn around and drop that down an inch or two if I wanted to. But one of the key things to remember is, generally speaking, you always want to have your feet below your head within reason. You know, if you have your feet above your head when you wake up in the morning, you're going to have headaches and all sorts of bad news. So, you know, just try to avoid that. But we've got pretty well the core of the main frame set up now. And now we'll just go back and put some additional tension on it so it really locks this in, yeah? Okay, so now I'll just come and stand back on this side again just to kind of stay out of the camera as much as possible. But I've got these little drop lines that exist. Now the thinking behind these is they're free to move along the line with ease, but as soon as I apply tension they lock and hold and they're not going anywhere, yeah? So the way I'm going to work these now is, and I'm just going to pop where we quick release connected here, I'm just going to pop that out so we're free. And what I'm going to do now is this prusik with its little drop line, I'm going to take my main line end that had the knot on it, and I'm just going to slide this up. I'm just going to feed that right through the drop line's prusik loop, and then I'm going to just slide that prusik back up the line a bit and apply a bit of tension this way. And now I'm already starting to get tension on the line. This is already tight enough it could be a ridge line easily. But the main line's end, I'm going to now pull, and as I pull I can apply additional tension, and this knot now I'm going to bring this way to give me double leveraging. Then I can use these loops that I have on the line to really kind of hold the line and give me good strength to pull back against itself. And as you can see, I can pull it back fairly substantially. Hopefully I'm not wandering off camera here, but I'm going to do the exact same thing where I just want to feed that knot through one of the lock Brommels further up the line, and now I'm extremely tight on here. This thing is not going anywhere. It's lock solid. There's the tension on this is just ridiculous because we did like a double leveraging point right at this point. And because these are modular systems, if I don't want to have this additional one on here hanging and that kind of stuff, exactly as I showed earlier, I can just pull on the loop, break its back, and then free it up so that it's not connected to this anymore. And this is now totally free. I could go off and use this for other things, like if I wanted to hang my cook pot and that kind of stuff, as I've shown in previous videos, yeah? So one way or the other, like I say, we're locked now. This loop is really, really tight around these two trees, and we'll start to move on to the next step. I'll zoom in and just show a little bit of a close-up of that, and then we'll move on to the next, yeah? So you can see now, this little prusik is holding on for dear life. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. But that's the one kind of holding the first tension like you'd get off a trucker's hitch and that kind of thing. And then further out now, this is where I've just stuffed the knot through one of the locked brommels that exist in the line. And if I want to release this all, I can simply grab this cable and just pull that knot back out through those locked brommels, and the whole thing will release. So there is no kind of, you know, knots to untie or anything. I just quick release, pull on this tab, and we're gone. And this whole thing will just start to fall apart. And then I easily just slide this back out through the drop line prusik that I had here, and the whole thing just comes apart, yeah? So it's really easy to kind of attach and detach from trees and that kind of stuff. I'll stand back and do like a pan across the full length of it to show you what it's like with full tension on it and all that kind of stuff. But this is extremely strong. Like I've got these cables doubled up, so you're talking 3,600 pound test, if you will, that exists on this line. So I'm not worried about it breaking when it comes to holding my body weight or any of that business. This Kevlar rope can easily handle that. It's stronger than mule tape and just a portion of the diameter and size, yeah? Now I'll stand on the inside here to show you guys kind of the full scale of it, if you will. Of, like I said, from this tree to that tree, it's maybe even 12 feet. You know, it's a half decent length. You know, that's, my body would be, you know, if I was laid out here, from the tips of my fingers, I could easily sit between these trees and still have a couple feet on both sides, yeah? Then when it comes to the space, you always want to have it, if you can find the trees available, or you have to go around two trees on the one side or whatever, where it's, you see how it's a fair bit wider than my chest, because when we go to lash this all in, this will pull in a bit with tension, and it'll be more close to the width of me, yeah? So larger trees are always better. You know, if you're on the west coast, it's not hard. I know on the east coast, they've got smaller diameter trees and that kind of thing. So you might have to look at going around two trees on both ends that were close to each other, you know, that kind of stuff. But that's all stuff you can easily find when you're out in the woods, right? It's not difficult. But as you can see, I'm applying the weight of my hands now, and there's not too much sag in this line, because Kevlar is kind of known to have very little sag for, you know, what it is, if you will, compared to other cordage. But we're pretty well set up now, where these are tight, they're strong, they're on there. I'm not worried about that. I've got the head end now is a little bit higher, because I like having my head about 2 inches, say, you know, what would that be, 6 centimeters, 8 centimeters, something like that, above my feet. Generally speaking, I like to have this end be a little higher than that end, yeah? But we'll move on to the next step, and we'll start using the other modular ropecraft system now to start to turn this into a bed frame. So now I've got my tarred bank line, the simple do-it-yourself modular ropecraft systems. Like I say, full tutorials on the channel when it comes to how these are done as well. And you know, bank line's fairly readily available and common amongst the bushcraft community, so this stuff should be fairly familiar terrain to you. But I've got 2 of my units now, and I need to daisy chain a bunch of these together to form a longer line. So now I'll just stop and show you guys kind of a couple different options of what you can do here. So I can take these and just kind of do the same, where I form a little sliding pocket, just like I did with the orange ones, and then just feed the other one through and have it kind of lock in behind the first knot after the loop on that one. And now they're connected, and I've got a little loop hanging off I could use for other things. So that's one way you can connect them, but I lose this kind of 2 inches in length if I go that way, yeah? So I'll show you the other way that you can kind of easily connect these together now, and that's where I turn around and just take the one unit, and make sure I'm on camera still. I take the one unit here, I feed it through just a little bit, and then I take the rest of its unit and just slide it back through itself and connect on that way. And now it forms another little knot that I can use along these lines where it's, you know, the knots and the loops and that kind of stuff, like a jungle knot and that kind of thing. And it gives me a bit of extra length in that regard. Yeah, so you can connect either way, whatever to your discretion. I'm going to go off and connect a stack of these together now. It takes me about 2 minutes or so to go and hook these all together, but in essence I just want to make them into a larger length of cordage that I can work with for the bed. Yeah, so I'll go off and do that and then I'll cut back. Okay, so like I say, it's about 2 minutes later now. And I've just gone and daisy chained together a bunch of these now. I've still got some sitting in my pocket just in case I need more later, but one way or the other, we're at the point where this is getting long enough now I can start to work with it. And as you can see, all the daisy chaining did was just make it that I've got a long line, right? So it's easy enough for me to kind of work with as I go through this project. So let's now shift back over to the frame of the Kevlar that's around the trees now and start to lash this all in place. Yeah. Okay, so just kind of stepped back into the inside just to keep myself out of the camera, but now I'm going to take one of these little modular Ropecraft units I have, just one of the singular ones to get me started, and I'm going to come up to one of the loops that exists on my Kevlar modular Ropecraft system. I'm going to feed the one loop through, and now I don't even have to go all the way through. I simply can just hook this on as such and pull back, and now I'm attached at this point. So I can move this a bit, but I'm stuck within the loop now of the Kevlar locked brommels that are existing all the way along the line. So they can only go so far, yeah? And then what I'm going to do, just to get the rest of the main body of this kind of started and flowing, is I'm just going to take the one end of the longer line here, and when it comes to kind of connecting this on now, super simple, just like I showed a minute or two ago. For the first initial connection, because I've got this big long line, I don't want to necessarily pull it all the way through. I'm going to do exactly as I showed earlier, where I'm just going to create that little pocket and I'm going to feed the loop through and then just let the knot set in behind it, a little arc head knot, and now I'm attached on here. And now I can start to weave. So I'll step the camera angle back and start to walk through exactly what I'm doing in my weaving as I go, yeah? Okay, so now when it comes to starting to kind of go back and forth and that kind of thing, I'm gonna take my bundle now and just bring it over. And now this is gonna have to feed through one of the lock brommels that sits on this side, yeah? And I want it to be opposite now of where the first connection was. And like I say, I'm just going to pop open one of these lock brommels and start to feed that bundle stack through. And this is where it can take a couple minutes, just because if your lines are super tight, you might only be able to fit through a single diameter in the line rather than the whole bundle. It really depends on how tight you made things. But now that I'm connected on this side into one of its lock brommels, I'm going to come back now towards the side we first started on, and now every second locked brommel that exists on that side is the one that I'm going to be passing through. So I'll stop and kind of shift camera angles and show exactly what I'm talking about, so it's clear as you get started. Once you get going, it just becomes mindless and you just go, but I just want to make sure it's absolutely clear as we kind of initiate this build out, yeah? So hopefully you can see now, this is right where I first attached, yeah? So then when you look at the lines, I've got these loop lock brommels that exist. I want to skip this one and then move to the second one down. Then I'm going to be skipping every second one on both sides as I walk down. So hopefully that's clear enough for you guys. And like I say, these are pretty tight, so it's hard to fit my entire bundle through. And you don't have to, I'm just trying to be lazy and having to pull the line through, but in essence you just want to get it through to the point where there's some tension now that exists, and this whole thing, it's okay to turn around and pop it to the point where and let me just apply more tension than I need to. But it's okay to pop it to the point where one of these knots comes through, because all that does is just kind of lock and hold it a bit more firmly as you move through time. So, you know, it's not a bad thing to have these little knots kind of bind and catch. They really help hold tension to the bed as you go, as you're kind of forming this, as you move down the length, yeah? And you'll see what I mean as we go. But one way or the other, I'll shift the camera angle back again, and I'll start just hitting every second one, and we'll start to kind of set up the body of it, and you guys can just see it as it flows, yeah? Okay, so now when it comes to the tension that you apply here, you know, you want to do it relative to what your chest width is, yeah? So it's easy enough to turn around and just pull a little tighter, pop another knot or two, and get it to the point where I feel like, yeah, that's about the width that I want it at. And then, like I say, just kind of start to pull a couple of those knots through that are on the tarred bank line, and then they'll just catch and hold on their own accord. So it really helps, you know, when it comes to kind of keeping and locking some of the tension. Those little knots will just help you out in kind of holding that. As you can see, I can let go and the knots are now kind of locking and holding. But one way or the other, I'm just going to drop this now, see if I can untangle this, or if it's just going to become a jumbled mess on me. We'll see. But instead of trying to feed the bundle through, because what ends up happening is the Kevlar gets tighter and tighter as well, because you're now applying tension in on both sides. So either way, as you move through this process though, it gets easier to feed the line through because you don't have as much of a bundle. But if you know you're already dealing with significant tension right to begin with, you know, you might as well, right? Of kind of just go down to a single line that you're feeding through. So I can see I'm through this one here. I'm going to skip this one. I'm coming to this one. So this is, like I was saying earlier, every second one. And now I'll just kind of feed the entire line through. And you can see, this is why I like to kind of do it in a bundle, because those little knots do catch exactly as you want them to, but at the same point in time, it just makes it a little more complicated to feed all the line through, yeah? But it's all elementary stuff. I mean, this isn't rocket science, right? So when I see that I'm into a good point of tension, I know I'm good at this point. I can easily come back and come underneath. Either way, you can go over top or underneath. It really doesn't matter when it comes to that. When it comes to back over to this side, exactly as I did before. There's the first. I go to the second. Now you could slide a toggle in here if you feel like it's pinching on your thumbs too bad or any of that business. But generally speaking, I just set my thumb in, and it allows me to kind of open the space large enough to get those knots through without too much issue. But if it does become a problem and you feel it's difficult to kind of keep your thumb in there, it's easy enough to just throw a little stick in there, right? Kind of give you the space to help feed those knots through without it being a complication. Speaking of little sticks, almost every time in a video, right? If you watch previous videos of mine, that's just the nature of the beast. Always seems to happen. But I just want to keep feeding that through. Now, I won't carry on showing me just weaving each line. I'll go and do a couple of them, and then I'll cut back. But as you can see, it's a 2-minute job, right? And now I'm kind of through. I've got tension here. If I want a bit more, like I say, just pop another one of those knots through and just set it into its pocket. And I can see I'm still about the width of me, so I'm happy in that regard. Come back. There's one. There's two. That's the one I'm going to want to go through. And like I say, just for the example's sake, if I feel like the tension between these lock rommels is just too much, it's easy enough to just pop a stick in there. Opens it up for you and allows you to feed those knots through a lot easier, yeah? Without, you know, crushing your thumb or anything in between the tension of the lock rommels and all that business. So there's lots of different variants you can do in that regard. It's all totally up to your discretion. But nothing to it, right? Really elementary stuff. I pull out that toggle when I know I'm through to the point I want it to be. Let the tension form, back to this side. Easily turn around and say 1 there. There's 2. Put the toggle in on this side. Allow it to protect my thumb. And carry on, yeah. So one way or the other, I'll stop the camera filming all this. I'll just go and lay out a bunch of lines, and then I'll cut back when I'm a little further along, yeah. Okay, so I know the black tarred bank line doesn't come out too well on the camera that way, but hopefully you guys are able to see kind of a zigzag pattern that starts to form. So to get to this point took me about somewhere between about 5 and 10 minutes, to give you an idea. And the length of it, you know, you can run this as long as you want, really. If you've got lots of the simple bank line, you know, modular ropecraft systems and that kind of stuff, then you can easily make this to be, you know, 20 foot if you wanted to put up longer range and all that kind of stuff. But now that we're down to this end, I'm just going to check my distance to make sure that I'm at least about 6.5 foot, 7 foot, because I'm 6 foot tall myself. So I just want to make sure I've got ample room for me to lay down on this, yeah. But and it looks like I've got to hook a couple more of the modular ropecraft systems onto here. But the thinking is now, where we skipped every second one, I'm going to head back up the line and filling in the every second one that we skipped, yeah. So I'll go strap a couple more of the modular ropecraft systems on here, and then we'll start to head back that direction to kind of fill it in more, yeah. So like I say, I know the camera doesn't pick it up that great, but hopefully you can see where it kind of starts to form this crisscross pattern, yeah. So, and that's really what's going to sustain your body weight. You know, you're going to end up laying onto that frame, if you will. And I just want to run that up, right up to the other end, yeah. Just zigzag back through every second one on the way out. Alright guys, so I'm kind of zigzag back up. I'm shy about maybe 2 or 3 of these modular ropecraft systems, so I'm just gonna stop it short here. It's okay, I've still got plenty here to show the example, but I used some on a pack frame in a previous video, and I was debating on whether I was gonna yard those off and bring those out, and I didn't. So one way or the other, I'm just shy 2 or 3 of these, but it's not a showstopper. We'll just carry on with the example. So I've just zigzagged back through to this point here, and I'm getting down to the end of my line, yeah. So it's really, really easy though. If I want to turn around now and I want to kind of tie this off, if you will, it's easy enough to turn around and just come to one of the existing ones here, any one of them. I could even open this up on just on the line itself, and I just want to pull that enough where I can get one of these knots, and I want to bring it back, and I want to just set that knot into itself as such. Hopefully the camera's given that justice. I'll try to come in as close as I can with that, where that knot's now just being pinched in between the line, and it's held. This is locked, it's not going anywhere. This little line has a slip and sway of about 3 or 4 inches, but it's not going to stop this. The tension on the line will hold this. But we'll just kind of pan back now, and you can see, hopefully the camera's picking it up. I know the black cordage really is difficult, but you can see it's got an extensive zigzag pattern now, and that runs about 85% of this. Like I said, I would have gone the full distance if I had 2 or 3 more modular ropecraft systems, but such is life, right? So one last thing I'll mention, you might find if you're putting one of these together yourselves where that there's a bit of slack now, you'll see here in one of the lines. That's not a showstopper. When your body weight sets down onto here, it'll straighten out the tension that sits, and after a couple times of laying in this will all just kind of balance out and self-correct on its own, yeah? So like I say, one way or the other, I'll kind of pan the camera back and I'll lay on it and show you kind of how easy it is to carry. I'm a 230-pound guy, 6 foot tall, so I'll lay on it and show you how good it is to carry me and all that kind of stuff, yeah? Okay, you can see now it's easy enough for me to get on here, and it's totally comfortable. It's carrying me. I don't feel like it's restrictive in any way or anything like that. You know, it's got enough support. I can feel a few gaps up near here where I just needed that extra 2 or 3 modular ropecraft systems to kind of finish it off. But I'll whip off a couple more of those when I get back to the house and that kind of stuff. But as you can see, easily able to carry me and sustain my weight. And like I say, I'm a 230-pound guy. It's not like, you know, I'm skinny by any stretch of the imagination. So one way or the other, I see it as this is, you know, comfortable enough where I could easily spend a night sleeping on this. You know, it gets me up off the ground so I don't have to worry about the cold of the earth and that kind of stuff. So if I was desperate in a situation where I didn't have bedding and that kind of stuff, I could easily put a low-lying tarp over top of this with my Frank Bush Rapid Ridge line, which I've shown in previous videos as well. You know, it's separate from the Modular Ropecraft systems. And as you can see, I'll turn around and kind of use it more as a chair. And if you hear the creaking, that's more the bark on the tree. But I can sit on it as a chair as well. And it's, you know, comfortable. I can feel the lines of the Kevlar kind of poking in a bit. Really, I could use a bit more tension when it comes to how tense I made these, and that probably would have given me enough to go right to the end, but such is life, right? You know, it's always one of those things. I can stop afterwards now and go and adjust the tension on these and bring it all in, but one of the things is that the width of this overall unit will start to contract, yeah? So I'll shift the camera angle back and give you kind of one more different angle of me laying in it so you can see kind of how far I am off the ground and that kind of stuff. I'm still sustained a good distance from the ground, but one way or the other, this is easily good enough to use as like a hammock. It has about the same level of comfort and all that kind of stuff. But like I say, it's my Modular Ropecraft system now. I'm not having to pack an extra piece of gear. If I have to, I can set this up, have a hammock, get me up off the ground without carrying it. You know, these Modular Ropecraft systems, they normally would sit in my bag always. They're standard, you know, kit and package with my bag. I tend to go fairly rope heavy. I do a lot of ropecraft when I'm out in the woods. So having this in my kit is just, like I say, it's bulk standard. But like I say, I'll shift camera angles now because I wasn't too sure if the camera got exactly how much clearance I got compared to where it starts. So I'll try to shift the camera back a little bit further so you guys can see how much drop that this has and that kind of stuff. And if any of that's a problem, it's easy enough to turn around and just adjust the tension a little further on the original lines that we did with the Kevlar, and I can easily adjust the tension that I have. Like even put my body weight on here, I can feel there's a bit more looseness to these lines now. It's easy enough to walk back through this, tighten it all up, but like I say, the only thing to be mindful of is it does restrict the width, because the more tension you have, the more it wants to pull in, yeah? But let me go set the camera up on a different angle and I'll start to wrap this video up. So, and I just adjusted the tension at this Kevlar knot that's in the main frame, just to make sure that any slack that was in it was kind of firmed up. So I just moved that knot down one lock Rommel. Really, really simple. And in order to kind of balance out, if you were sitting in this, then that the weight of your body kind of caused the tension of some of the cross lines to become a little saggy, you just kind of hold on to both sides and pull it outward, and it'll just kind of spread the tension back out across those lines and balance things out so that there isn't a sag in a specific spot. But when it comes to getting into these units now, like I say, I generally speaking, I'll stand with my back to it, I'll put my hands on it to kind of lower it down to my butt, and then just kind of rock my butt onto it, and I'm on. And it's just that simple. You can see I've still got good clearance. I don't think I can touch the ground without falling out, but super comfortable. Like I say, it's about the same comfort level as a standard hammock would be, you know, when it comes to things. And if I put some spreader bars in it, I can force it to be wider, but generally speaking, I would need to have a few more of these bankline Modular Ropecraft systems, just to make sure that I covered the extra cordage needed to cover that wider width, yeah? So when it's always a balance between how many of those you bring versus, and you can see here, I'll switch to the side. I can easily side sleep and that kind of stuff, you know, and it's not like a hammock where it's pinching in at my feet or my head because of how the hammock forms. It's still parallel, so I don't feel like there's any cramming on the sides or any of that business. And as you can see, good clearance, yeah? And it's one of those things where I don't have to pack extra gear. I can have this now, and my feet are fully off the ground. You know, this thing's supporting me without issue. And as I use it a couple times, generally speaking, that's what I'm going to end up doing now. Is I've got the knot that sits in the main frame. I'm just going to hold that loop, pop that knot out. the main frame of this is now loose. The whole thing could slide, but I can pull this, give myself extra tension on that line, and then set in that knot into the next locked Brommel up to kind of make sure that I have lots of lock tension, and I could adjust the tension on the tarred bank line and all that stuff. All of it's really, really flexible and really easy to adjust, yeah? And when it comes to tearing this down, I didn't tie any knots here. So all I really have to do is pull this quick release that was holding on to the bank line that I showed 2 minutes ago in the video, and then just start to unravel it through how I've woven it in. And I've reclaimed all my kit, and it takes about 5-10 minutes to go through that process, and I'm back to having my 2 modular Ropecraft systems back in my bag again. So when I take this all back down again, I'm just going to pop the tension off the main frame to make it easier and slacker, and just hook that in up here instead. Hopefully the camera's getting that. I'm just going to hook it in up there instead to kind of give more slackness to the line. And what that does is the locked Brommels that sit here, it just makes it easier for me to open those to get my lines out. And if I shift you over just a tiny bit, let's see if I can get the camera straightened out here. Now when it comes to the tarred bank line, like I say, this was just quick released in, where I can now start to just pop those out, and as fast as I put them in to begin with, I can start to unravel them and just pull them back and reclaim them all. And then let me shift you that way a bit. I won't bother showing the whole thing, but I just want to show kind of, as soon as you drop a bit of the tension on here, how easy it is to start to free all this back up again, where, like I say, these, now that those lock Brommels aren't under tension, it's really easy to just come along and start, open up the lock Brommel and just feed the bank line through, and it's just that elementary. And I just keep doing that over and over again, and it'll eventually get to the point where, in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, I'll have reclaimed this. Then none of this required any knots to do, right? It's one of the beauties of using these modular Ropecraft systems. It allows me to build out, make sure I'm not wandering off camera too far. Yeah, it makes sure that I'm not having to leave any cordage in the field and that kind of stuff. And it's really rapid and simple, to do all of this stuff. Now, there was no, advanced knot techniques or any of that shenanigans when I'm out here, and because I'm not tying any knots, even if the weather gets cold, my dexterity isn't that great, I can still easily do all of this kind of stuff. So I just wanted to show how easy it is to kind of release these back off from the locked Brommels, and once you want to tear it all down. But I'll just stop the camera filming this, because I'm just going to walk through, first pull off all my tarred bank line, and then I'll show you how easy it is to just reclaim all this frame again. So I guess this is another little side detail I should show. So these tarred bank lines, they can, the line itself can be like 30 feet or so, that kind of stuff. So if you don't want to pull the whole thing through each locked Brommel and stuff, you can easily take these now where we daisy chain them together. And if I walk up to the 5th knot, which is right here, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When I see a set of knots, I know the 5th one is where I've joined those together. So it's easy enough to just open that one. I pull through the remainder of the line that I don't want to have to keep pulling through every single time, because it's just getting long, if you will. And I'll just pull that one through. And we're at about the halfway point now, yeah? So, and you can see though, I free them off now. So now I've got one set that I can just bundle up and put back in my bag. And now, as such, nothing complex, but I've got the one set now I can turn around and bundle up in my bag. And now when I want to free up the remaining, bank line from those locked Brommels, now that line is shorter, so I don't have to worry about feeding it through, and it can just help accelerate the process of tearing this all down. And it just allows it where I have two preset lines of my tarred bank line of the Modular Ropecraft systems, where I'll just bundle them up and they'll be in my kit, just like I had two of the orange sets. Yeah, so like I say, I'll just carry on with the remainder. I just thought I'd stop and show you that kind of like little shortcut tip, if you will. Okay, so pulled off all the bank line Modular Ropecraft systems, and now we're back to the main frame. Yeah, and this is really elementary as well, right? Because there's no knots or anything that exist in here, there's just that one quick release that we had here, where we just pop that, we free it up here, and we're free. That's off. We're off the tree. It's just that simple. I can pull this around and start to bundle it back up again. And it's the same now for the other side. As soon as we release on this side, the other side just comes free. So I'm just gonna put those back into rapid release bundles like I've done in lots of other previous videos. And like I say, I'll wrap this video up. So like I say, it took about 5, maybe 10 minutes to tear that all back down again. And as you can see, it's all ready to go back into my kit now and be used for the next adventure, right? So like I say, I'll wrap this video up, and hopefully you enjoyed, you know, making a raised bed using the Modular Ropecraft systems that I've created without having to tie any knots when you're out in the field. You know, you just whip them together and use them. But if you enjoy this type of content, you know, like, share, subscribe, and all that kind of happiness. And until next time, yeah, cheers.